Welcome to Testimony Mountain. So glad you're here and glad to be here today with Veronica Swift. And I so appreciate what she does. And do you want to share a little bit about that, Veronica?
Hi, thanks for having me on again, Adena. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.
So I'm a writer. I guess I can call myself that now, and I blog about the Brotherhood and the occult, and I use whistleblower information. So people who have been in the system or who are still in the system or partially out or whatever their status is, and they have chosen to tell about their experiences. I take those experiences and I try to learn about their life and then correlate them with other individuals who have also had similar experiences. And to help us all understand, this crazy world that we're living in, where it seems like, at least from what I'm gathering now, that this underground occult really runs the world. It runs everything. It doesn't just run the World Economic Forum or the UN or whatnot, but it's got its fingers in every pie, in every country, in every location, down deep in the sea, under the earth, in the air. There isn't a place it hasn't affected, which I didn't anticipate when I first started looking into it. So I write on a website, which is my name.blog, veronicaswift.blog, and you can find 300 or 400 articles there and other information and transcripts and all sorts of stuff. And it's a subscription community because of the harassment I've gotten in the past for writing about this kind of stuff. So unfortunately, I've had to put it behind a paywall, but hopefully it's affordable, and come and visit us there. We'd love to have you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate the information you put out. It's helps to have it synthesized down into one place. And I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
We're going to go a kind of interesting way today. And this is a little harder and a little more personal for me. But recently, my husband put it out on Facebook. And so I thought it probably is good for me to just make some comments here. And that is that my husband and I are separating, and we're also separating our ministries. And so this is especially challenging because we've ministered together for many years and enjoyed it, really loved it. But over the last 4 or 5 years, as my memories have surfaced, I've been awakened to some certain things. And it's that place of when your eyes are open to, like you said, how the cult stuff is in all over.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we know that Jesus rules and reigns over all of that, and he is the one who is truly ultimately in control and has a good plan. And so I want to keep that as the focus. But that we often run through challenges and trials here as we walk these things out. And so this isn't easy for us, but we're amicable about it. And I do believe that the Lord's hand is in this at this time for us. There were issues with our worldviews and different beliefs, but then also we both come from trauma backgrounds. And there were just areas that neither one of us could heal together. And so he, wasn't able to believe my memories. And so that was hard not to be able to be truly myself around him, in that, in groups, I could freely share who I am and my passion for life and this journey. But I couldn't share with him. And so it reduces things down to, talking about the weather or, just mundane things. And, most of my family doesn't understand either. And so this is a topic I thought we would dive in today. The rest of what I share, I just want to talk more in generalities, not specifically my family. But this is a really challenging issue for survivors because a good share of the time we aren't understood and by our family. And so we thought we'd just open up the topic and see where it goes. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Veronica, or
I think it's a huge issue. I know marriage, from what I've read, in the system, is often, if not most of the time, prearranged, so you're guided people are guided or encouraged towards individuals, or maybe those individuals are sent to certain people to connect because, like you said, if you've both got a trauma background, there's something beneficial for that in the system perhaps.
Mhm.
So I've seen a lot of things and read a lot of things about how that's a possibility that they
Yes.
kinda keep you can be reported on if you're married to someone in the system, and I think that that's kind of what the brotherhood encourages in a sense, is to have
Mhm.
someone there who can you can keep tabs on each other. It's kind of like a mini circle, right? So
Yes.
if individuals are grouped together in groups of people that they tend to call circles, or at least some people call them circles. And all
Mhm.
those individuals in that circle have the same shame and the same sins and the same, um, illegal activity that they have to cover up for one another. It
Mhm.
keeps things quiet and it kind of bonds them together. So it's a trauma bond in a way,
Yeah.
connects them together and keeps that more likely to be intact than if you had. I mean, I would imagine if they were married to people outside the system, the likelihood of them getting out would be
Much
much
more.
greater. Yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but that's my thought.
Yeah, definitely, and, some of the accounts that I've read, it's that place where, it is so subtle, you don't realize that you're being put together, and so you think, you've initiated, the relationship and all of that, and then, they later discover, "Oh, no, this was pre-planned, and this was part of, the journey." And I think this is especially, true in groups that are, generational is, like you said, they're gonna protect their assets. Um, and so this is more likely for those who have a generational background versus those who may have, just been exposed at preschool or something like that. And so it is significant to walk this pathway and not wanting people who are survivors to be paranoid now going like, "Oh, what about my, spouse or
Mhm.
whatever?"
Right, yeah,
Um, but I do have a friend who, is an SRA survivor, and he's actually just going through his divorce right now, and he was like, "I don't know any survivors who have been able to stay married." Now, we only know a small sample, so I don't know, you know,
right.
nationwide or worldwide what that percentage is. But it is really, really challenging, particularly when these, the memories surface. And
Yeah,
um, some people are really obvious in how they were programmed. The system likes to polarize things, and so they don't care which polarization place you go as long as you're there. The light side of the system, the dark side of the system, etc. But also in how they program survivors, and so they're um, some survivors are programmed, or I would say the majority tend to be where they do have symptoms or traces their whole life that you can see that there's some instability and sometimes mental challenges and issues and so on. And so because of that, people can, if the memories do surface, people would just go, yeah, they're kind of mentally off or unstable and those kinds of things.
right.
But for me, that was harder because I was programmed to be functional
Yeah,
and to be hidden. And so, those of us who this has happened to, it's a lot harder for our family or spouse to understand because I always looked like the good one. You know,
yeah,
my husband struggled. He's public with this, so I can say this. He struggled with a lot of depression and anger. And, the first, 25 plus years of our marriage were very difficult, because of that.
yeah,
And so I looked like the good one who was holding everything together.
yeah.
And he was, the bad one. Um, and, now I recognize, no, it's not that I have my share of stuff. It's just I was programmed uh, to be functional.
Display it differently. It's a different. Yeah, I think I can't think of a specific instance of this at the moment, but I would suspect that, um, it would serve the kind of chaos agenda and the distraction agenda to have
Mhm.
someone who'd been, who just is able to, um, release that anger and be kind of chaotic in public. It would serve a wider purpose if you're married to someone like that. It's very difficult, but it's also very kind of stereotypically male too. So men tend to do that in general. It doesn't
Mm.
look cult-like if it
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's very hard. It's the I remember a situation with my family, my grandparents, um, and, they I don't have system involvement in my family. I've looked hard and there's just nothing there that I can find.
Mhm.
But just in a regular marriage, I watched them and they were not very well they're not very compatible human beings. And I would watch my grandfather, do things to annoy my grandmother,
Mm.
and she would just blow up, you know?
Mhm.
And everybody would say, "Boy, she's got a temper," right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's really him behind the scenes pushing
Oh,
every button she has. Just endless pushing buttons until she couldn't hold it together any longer. So, doesn't
oh,
matter whether you've got a good marriage, bad marriage, compatible, non-compatible. There does tend to be the quiet one and the more
yeah,
outgoing one at times, and
yeah.
never kind of what it seems like. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's not we can look at other people's lives and like you said, you looked like the good one, he looked like the bad one. It's never as simple as when we're peering in somebody's front window, what we see. It's never that simple, especially when the occult is involved.
Yeah.
How does it feel though? How do you function after telling someone as close to you as your husband
Mhm.
that you have these memories and then to be I don't know what he said, but shot you down somehow. How do you recover from that? Because I imagine there's got to be a deep sense of sadness followed by I can't even imagine what.
Yeah. Definitely, and a lot of it too is that, I struggle to believe the memories myself.
Yeah.
And so there's so much, we talked about last time about denial programming and dissociation and so on, and that is so strong.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, to have those closest to you not believe is exceedingly painful,
Yeah.
um, because you finally have the courage to face it and to voice it. And when they go, basically, you're just making this up. You're just trying to get attention. And it's like,
Mm.
you don't know. I'll just, again, be candid is even, my husband being public about the divorce on Facebook this last week was really hard for me in the sense that um, in the system, for me, attention was bad and means death.
Mm.
Because if, they're paying attention to you, it means they're doing things to you more and more.
Right.
And
Right.
so a lot of me has been very freaked out, um, you know, just even with the love and attention that, this has brought. And I'm grateful for the outpouring of love and support. But at the same time, it's like this attention is not, I'm struggling with it.
Yeah.
And it's
It's a
it's an
constant trigger.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity for the Lord to help me overcome that. But to be accused of saying you're just trying to get attention by these memories, is like, "No, no, that's the furthest thing from my
Yeah,
mind.
last
I
thing
don't
you
want
want.
any of this to be true." Um, and so I find, if I'm not staying regularly current with the Lord and present, and in safe community that I do feel safe with, um, those things, the memories seem to be like they're further and further away. And I think that's part of the programming. When, my mom was here recently and it was challenging because, you know, she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And I think she's dissociated and doesn't know what happened. And so I have great compassion for her. And, we have a good time just having pleasant conversation. But that reinforces this. How could I ever think that my family participated in any of this?
Yeah.
And I must be crazy. And, by the time her visit is up, I'm completely doubting myself and thinking, I'm crazy. I must be crazy,
Yeah.
And so taking it back to the Lord and go, am I crazy?
Right.
You
Right.
know, and so it is this deep struggle, that we have. And a friend of mine, we were talking kind of about this, and he was like, "This is the club nobody wants to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
None of us want this."
No, I can't
Um,
imagine. Yeah.
and yeah, so
It, what you said made me think about the lack of information, the lack of education, and probably, if I was to do some digging, it's probably structured the way so that we are taught at a young age, you don't trust your imaginary friends, quote
yes,
unquote. You
yes,
don't trust the things that you actually see that may not be of this dimension and maybe of a spiritual dimension.
mhm,
And kids may have a better eyes to see that than we do as adults. But I've heard that they're told, yeah, it's just your imagination. It's a dismissive kind of a thing.
yeah,
And I think memories are sometimes treated that way as well. Uh,
mhm,
are you sure? Did you get it all right? Is it all correct? And um, no memory is ever perfect, and it's always from your own point of view. So if someone else has a memory of a similar event, it's going to be from their point of view. They're going to have different perspective and peripheral vision, and certain things will stick out and other things won't. And traumatic memory is stored differently than regular
yes,
memory. It's often much more vivid, but
mhm,
also can be more fragmented depending on how your brain actually compartmentalizes it and stores it. So they've done us a great disservice in dismissing our quote unquote imagination,
yes,
and the whole hearing voices thing, well, that's been medicalized, and maybe it's a good thing if you hear the voices of demons. Maybe it's a good thing that you hear them because then you can get them out. You can
yeah,
rebuke them. You can cast them out of yourself. You can
mhm,
work on, but the general medical sense is that you just have to shut them up.
yeah,
Maybe it's God talking to you and you don't want to shut that up. Maybe you have angelic, uh, I don't know, whispers in your ear. Those you need to pay attention to. But everybody just it's all kind of medicalized. Our memories, nope, if they're bad, they're no good.
mhm,
And anything that you imagine is, schizophrenic in origin, the
yeah,
voices in your head. So we're taught a lot of things that just do so much disservice to anybody trying to remember anything. It's really sad. It's really, really sad. And then we have people on the other side of the aisle who say, well, every single memory is completely true.
mhm,
And that's not exactly accurate either.
mhm,
They have the ability now.
yeah,
I finally did get Svali's book after you mentioned it to me like 3 times. I finally acquired it. I read the second one. They have the ability to create experiences,
yeah,
and I'm not surprised, but, it's always nice to read it written out um, in book form by somebody who's lived it.
yeah,
They have the ability to put people through experiences that are not physically real, right? They're not three-dimensional, earthly real. They're
mhm,
virtual reality or whatever
yeah,
however they choose, holographic or however they choose to do this. And so people can have memories of things that aren't technically real, but they
yes,
also have the ability to make them feel at the same time. So they've hooked their nervous system up, they've hooked their skin, their organs. They can make them feel like an imaginary flame is
mhm,
physically burning their skin. So
yeah.
is that real memory? You can get into the argument about what is real and what is not real. So, but
To
memory
me,
is interesting like that.
yeah. To me, we experienced it as real, and so we have to process it as real, and that's why we need the support and love of those around us. And that's have come more and more to that understanding with programming sets and, virtual reality and the holograms. There's a whole spectrum of things. But I know that that is very, very different, when those memories come up than when I'm just daydreaming.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's important for people to understand, um, there is a difference. It's not just like we're sitting around, I wonder what this would be like, huh?
Mm.
It's like when memories come in, different people experience them differently, but from the extreme of an abreaction, where it's full blown sensing, feeling, whole body, emotions, the memory, or whether it's just, popping in, with confirmation. It's not like daydreaming or something like that. It's, so much more real. So anyway, I just,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's the whole it's easy to deny ourselves
mhm,
in order to not be labeled crazy by the outside world,
yeah,
because the label is also almost more difficult in some ways
mm,
than pushing the ramifications of pushing aside the memories. But if you do
yeah,
that long enough, you're going to suffer.
yeah,
So you have a choice. So it's hard. You have a choice between holding your marriage together or in suffering with the repression of your own memories that are naturally coming up at that point. That's a no-win situation.
yeah. And it's challenging when, it's it's one of those things where I found, particularly with parts as well, in the fragmentation, is that the more I suppress or don't pay attention to it, the more it will come out in other ways. So even physical symptoms. And so a lot of people don't realize how close, our emotions, our soul, and our body are connected, and that, when we suppress those memories, it manifests in our body. And so, things like migraine headaches, not all migraine headaches are that, but many of them are.
Yeah.
A lot of, autoimmune diseases, fibromyalgia, which I had, um, any of those kinds of things, they represent that internal conflict where, part of you knows, yes, this really happened to me. And the other part's going, no, 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 we've got to suppress it.
Yeah.
And it creates conflict internally and it affects our body. So,
Mhm. That's also been made more I mean, it's much, much more acceptable in modern day to have a physical ailment than it is to have an emotional
yes.
something that you need to bring up, need to speak about, want to bring out to another person. People are much more willing to talk about the doctor's appointment that you went to, or the medication that you're on, or the what how your foot is feeling, or whatever the issue is, than they are to be able to sit with you and listen to a difficult story. And that's a shame. That's a shame. It is. I think there's a hurdle, there's a hump to getting
Yes.
over listening to difficult stories. And I don't think nearly enough people hang tight through that difficult initial period and
Mhm,
go through their own grieving and go through their own sadness, because there
mhm.
is a point on the other side where you can listen to them and you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I think we'd all be better off if we got better at that.
Yeah, and that's really what we all need, not just survivors, but is that attunement is, I see you, I hear you, I understand, and I'm here with you. I'm delighted to be with you. And
Mhm.
there are solutions,
There are solutions, yeah.
and when someone will do that with you, oh, it makes all the difference. But when, it's not, it's challenging. And your analogy is so perfect in the sense that, because I was programmed to be functional, I look like I have it all together. And I have parts who that's their job, strong girl and good girl.
Yeah,
They're really good at doing that.
yeah,
And so, I would have to say sometimes to those around me is like, I'm in ICU right now. If you could see how I feel emotionally right now, that's what it looks like.
yeah,
Um, but because I look that I've got it all together, then, people don't think that, I struggle or have needs
yeah,
or this would be my reality, and so I understand it can be difficult, and that's what I appreciate about the work that you do, is getting the word out, and hopefully people, I'm hoping as more and more survivors come out, that there's more and more testimony, that there's more understanding of these types of things, because it is so complex, and
Yes.
it sounds ridiculous and crazy. Um, the
Yeah.
level of dissociating and all that happens. Um,
They're
yeah,
they're desperate. I think what I've learned is there's a desperation within this group to maintain silence, because without it,
yeah,
they've got nothing, literally. Their house of cards falls down if people find out about what's going on. So, there's a strong push to really beat you up,
mhm,
to keep you from talking. I mean, I experienced that myself. There's and I'm kind of like an interesting case in point, because I don't know of, if there is, I don't know of any other blog that goes into this in as much depth as I have. I mean, there are others, but I haven't found one if there is. So,
yeah,
and their desperation to keep me from writing is pretty strong.
yeah,
And so their desperation also in keeping people from learning about it, I would imagine, would also be strong.
yeah,
And their desperation to keep the people inside and not talking is also strong. So there's a lot of pressure from a lot of different angles towards people like myself who are just trying to learn, and people like you who are trying to heal, and
mm,
people who aren't out yet and are trying maybe to find their way out.
yeah,
Um, and I think, you know, publicly talking about it is one key.
yeah,
It's one key to doing it. If you're public and you're speaking, there's a measure of safety in that.
mhm,
And but at the same time, you have to know that they're gonna come at you with every programmed person on planet Earth to try to shut you up. So, it's a horrible, horrible place to be. I can't imagine, there are so many people, and I've seen this on, social media lately, I people saying, "I don't encourage someone to come out and talk. I just don't. It's too much stress, it's too much backlash, it's too much this, that, and the other." And so there's a lot of pressure not to, but the key is to look through their smoke and mirrors and say,
yes,
the reality of it is that when everybody talks, that's when it all falls apart for them.
yes,
And that's when everybody gets free of the chains, because they've only got the chains when nobody's speaking about it.
yes. And I believe that the only safe place we have, is with true Lord Jesus, and that He is able to protect us. And a lot of it
Right.
is, um, believing that, and so I know I'm struggling, with my parts and different, going like, no, no, no,
No.
and the wanting to run back to the safety of the marriage, of going, just compromise because that's
Right.
safe, and
Yeah.
all of those kinds of things, and it's scary to step out, in this way, and so I just want to encourage all of us that, the true family, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, have a way through the challenges, and I've heard testimony of people who have gotten completely out, and then the Lord has called them to go back into, the programming facility, and they're able to walk through the security system, because of the power of God, and
Yeah.
able to preach the gospel. And I am believing, the word lately that the Lord has been speaking to me is about a mass exodus. And I'm
Mm.
really believing for that. And I'm believing, that we get to be a part of that, partnering with, the Lord,
Yeah.
because this is his heart, to set the captives free.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited about that. And I just want to say real briefly that, with transitioning my ministry, we have a new website, www.transformations.community. And, this is a place where survivors can get help. We also have our starting a Saturday morning gathering, 11:30 Central Time, of just worship and spending time in the Word, doing life together. And so anyone is welcome to join in that. It's Zoom only. The replays will be available on that website, but just really excited to see what the Lord has and believing to build a community and a lot of different vision the Lord has given for what is possible. Now, when I look at it, I'm like, this is so crazy to even think this. I feel so broken myself, and like, maybe years down the line when I, am
Yeah.
fully whatever. Um, but I know that God has called me to do this now, even while I'm in process on this journey. And I'm just having to trust that they are my protection, they are my provision, and this is their vision.
Yeah.
And I just get to walk it out step by step. So that's open to any of you who are watching who would like to participate. And even that is a risk, of
Right.
saying that publicly.
Right. Well, I think it's good. It's nice that it's offered. I get a lot of questions, where do I go for help? How do I find something, somewhere to start? And your group, and I'm sure there are other groups and other organizations, but they are not easy to find.
Yeah.
And you never know whether they're trustworthy or not. So
Mhm.
it's nice to be able to say, hey, I know about this, and it might not be your cup of tea, but it's somewhere you can start and see what happens from there on. Yeah, so it's good for people to have somewhere to go, and great to have support, because
Yes.
there's nothing like hearing other people. There's nothing really like hearing or reading other people's stories to make it come alive to you that
Yes.
one person's story may sound absolutely nutter butters, but so does everybody else's in their own unique way. And
Yes.
that's because it's not us
Mhm.
people, it's not people who have been abused severely who are the crazy people. It's the
Mm.
people who are abusers.
Yeah.
And whether they are doing it because they didn't feel like they had any choice, or they were programmed to do it, or whatever the reason may be, it's the
Mm.
cycle of abuse
Yeah.
that makes the abuser the crazy one, not the victim, not the abused. So
Yeah.
I think we got to change that idea that the victims asked for anything, wanted this,
Mm.
invited it. You can't do that as a child. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
totally ridiculous. And no kid is crazy, and no adult is crazy. They're crazy. They are crazy. Some of the stuff they have set up in this system is utterly nuts.
Yeah.
Just crazy, 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 crazy. So, but they want to turn it around and make you feel like you're crazy for having experienced it. No
Yes.
dice. We don't believe you. You're
Yes.
you guys are not crazy at all. You're the sane ones. They're the the ones who need some help.
Yeah. And at the same time, a lot of victims become perpetrators, and it's hard.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's
But there's a
it
choice too. I mean, time and time again, I see people say, there's always that point of decision where you can make a choice to say no. And it may seem impossible in the moment, and it may seem like an overwhelming situation, and you may not feel like you have a choice. But it's
Mhm.
important to remind them, if any of them are listening, the next situation is a new opportunity. It's a new choice you can make. And you can, if even if you've done the wrong thing 1,000 times, you
Mhm.
can still do the right thing the 1,001st time, and that will make all the difference.
Yeah. I will say that it is extraordinarily difficult for those of us who have been mind controlled. Um, but it is possible. And that is part of, the message that we want to get out there, is that it is possible. Recovery and full healing and freedom is possible. Is it a journey, a long process? It may be, because we have so many layers of stuff that has to be processed.
Yeah,
Um, but when we can do it in the light of God's love, and this is the hard thing, is that our natural human tendency is to run, and
yeah,
hide or blame when we're confronted with our own stuff,
yeah,
or with our own pain. We just want to run away. But when we bring it into the light of the Lord's love, that is where healing takes place. But
yep,
it's an extremely vulnerable place that a lot of people struggle with. And, I was wrestling this week with parts of mine who wanted to go to oblivion, and
mm,
it's a dimension
uh,
under the sea. There is also an oblivion that's in the up above as well, dimensionally, that you go and you just sink into this nothingness, and so you don't feel your pain.
Yeah.
But the Lord showed me what was actually happening, and there was trades going on, and they were, vicious entities that were swirling around, that were devouring, um, and so it's like this illusion that you just go into oblivion and don't have to think and don't have to feel the pain, but actually they're siphoning off things and doing damage to you in the process.
Wow.
And so, until you see that and see, what is really going on, parts of you are like, let's just check out, let's go into that oblivion space where, we don't have to face the pain and the memories and the, you know, hurt and all of that, along with it. And so
Yeah,
it's really
it's important to
learning.
have respite from that a
Yeah.
little bit, but that would not be the way to go.
No.
Oblivion, no, mm-mm. Mm,
And
yeah,
so the true family, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, have safe places for us to go, where we can get that respite because we need it. Um, but so many survivors go towards addictive behavior, towards other ways of coping, which are only temporarily and often get us more into trouble. And so,
yeah. That's emotions are the root of all addiction, and then
mhm,
the very few communities recognize that. I read that in the front of a book on addiction once that, if everybody just was able to take care of their emotional hurts,
mhm,
there wouldn't be no substance abuse because it wouldn't be necessary
yeah.
because you wouldn't have that need to escape your own emotions. Yeah.
Mhm. So that's what I've appreciated about a lot of Swali's work, is really demonstrating the attachment bonds and how those are used in the system. And um, reading that the addiction actually stems, a lot of it, from uh, attachment bond issues. And
Mm,
so that's going back to babyhood,
right.
and
Yeah.
childhood. And so, when we work with people, it's not like telling them, you got to stop this, you got to stop that, you got to stop that when it comes to addictive behavior, because until you deal with the root cause, you're just managing symptoms,
Yeah.
and programs like AA and, can be helpful, but a lot of it is just managing things in our
Right.
own strength. And when we can go to the deep root of that pain and deal with the pain, the addictions are much easier to be released and not, a big issue.
Yeah. Yeah, you can let them go instead of fighting them. I know a lot of people fight them, and they don't often win when you're in that adversarial relationship with something that you can't control the desire for or the craving for. You're not gonna win a lot of times when you fight it. You gotta dig out the root. I've been doing
Yeah.
a lot of gardening this week, and, gardening with someone who doesn't understand that roots are important. You have to dig the root. You can't just pull at the top of the plant.
Yes.
You gotta dig the roots out, or you'll be right back there next week.
Yep.
And those those leaves that you just pulled last week will be right back. So you gotta dig that root out. You gotta get way down deep and get the whole thing, even if you leave enough of a piece. Some of these crappy grasses that I'm dealing with here, they'll grow right back. They'll
Yep.
wave their little green things in your face and say, "Neener, neener, neener, you did not get deep enough."
Yes. When I was in Colorado, I was doing a lot more gardening, and it was when my memories were first surfacing, and the Lord taught me so much through gardening, but also through that. There was a rock garden that had a lot of these flowers that they actually were pretty. They were pretty in one way, but they were also very invasive, and I wanted to do something different with them. And it was one of those things, once you got into it and you saw all these extensive root systems, I mean, it was hours and hours and piles of these roots, and the Lord was just speaking to me that through that for myself, is like, okay, we're doing a deep work, we're going for it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's worth it though, because if you can plant something else that's better and healthier and smells good and looks nice and it's real, um, you're in better shape afterwards. But the journey is not a fun one. And you have to decide whether you're gonna do it. Um,
Yeah.
I know one lady I read, she said, I don't know if it's worth it. And you may have to decide whether it's worth it for you or not. It was worth it for me, even though I started when I was pretty late in life.
Yeah.
And my whole life basically had been, as she put it, taken up and essentially destroyed by this group who had just had her going from one thing to another, doing what they wanted her to do. She
Yeah.
had to decide whether if the rest of her life, quote unquote, was worth it to do all this hard work. And I
Yeah.
think she decided that it was. And at the same time, she also figured out that part of the healing work and journey was that she had to disconnect herself from all of her family members that were not out yet,
Yeah.
because it was too much of a risk, and she had been pulled back in too many times by being connected with her children and her grandchildren and other relatives that she had been connected with before. And that's a really hard place to be, where you have to disconnect yourself from people who are good people, but who have the
Yeah.
potential to prevent you from being healed.
Yeah. And I'm having to walk that out too with the rest of my family. And I believe that when we walk it out with true Jesus, is He gives us the grace and the timing in each situation.
Yeah.
And so we can have a tendency, I know when I first started reading, I think it was Wendy Hoffman's material, I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to,
Yeah.
I might have to do all this, and there can be a lot of fear involved. But I believe that when we walk it out with true Jesus, there is a power and an ease, and kind of what they were showing, is kind of those spy movies when you have to, you know, duck, step over here, and you have to kind of know the right timing, move forward, step back,
Yeah.
stop, wait, okay, move forward. And it's not easy to do that. A lot of our internal mechanisms of impatience, of let's just do this, or things like that.
Yeah.
But I believe there's so much more protection when we stay in the timing of the Lord. Um, they've been telling me over and over, just put your hand in our hand and take the next step. So I
Right.
don't have to figure it out. I don't have to ponder, am I going to have to cut off this relationship, that relationship, or I'm going to have to make these changes? But just going, okay, Lord, what's the
One
next
step at a
step?
time. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. One step at a time. Yeah. And if you don't have that relationship and you've not cultivated it in early in life or middle in life or even yesterday, you can always ask for it.
Yes. And I don't know how anybody can walk through all of this stuff without true Jesus. I
Well,
am so very grateful. I know that it may be possible, but I'm just saying that there's so much more grace and ability with them. Um,
there's so much more ease in it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you almost can't, I could not have done what I'm doing without that, because there's so much pressure
yeah,
and, uh, I don't want to say attacks, but that's almost what it feels like.
yeah,
Um, and I'm not going to navigate it on my own at
yes,
all.
yeah,
And I haven't even recognized for the first year, I think I didn't recognize that what I was experiencing was even related to what I was writing.
yeah,
So there was that, I had to connect to those two things in my head and then say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't have to happen. It looks like I'm getting pushback because of what I'm
yeah,
writing. If you want me to do this, God,
mhm,
you're going to have to protect me. You're going to
yeah,
have to keep me safe, keep my equipment safe, keep my home safe, because I can't do it if I'm constantly being hit in one direction or another. I can't. I think I've probably told you before. I had to buy like over 10 mice for my computer
mm,
in the span of like 3 months in the first year I was writing, and I couldn't understand why the mice just kept dying. I mean, these are mice, for goodness sakes. They're computer mice. They are not high tech equipment.
yes,
Right? I don't even have anything fancy. They're not wireless. They're just, an old-fashioned corded mouse, and I
yeah,
went through like 10 of them, and it took me that long to clue in to like, okay, this is not a normal happening,
yeah,
number 1, and number 2, somebody's messing with your equipment, and it's, "Okay, God, you gotta protect these mice and the computer and the"
yeah,
So, and it wasn't, it didn't have to be a lengthy prayer. It didn't have to be a highfalutin request.
Yeah.
I just said, "Okay, God, you have to protect if this is what you want me to do,
Yep.
then you have to protect my equipment, and you have to protect me from, losing hundreds of dollars in buying new computer mice." And you know what? Then it stopped, and then I was like, "Okay, that's what it was," and I guess I'm gonna have to be a little more present and creative and 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 try to preempt some of this with more requests. But it's also a learning experience in the sense
Mhm.
that it's good. You learn what to ask for and how to ask sometimes and what to
Mhm.
demand at other times, and learning that you can demand
Mhm.
for evil forces to leave you alone. I can
Yes.
demand that they stay away. I can set a boundary around my being in my home and say, you're not allowed to come any closer than, I think I put it at 1,000 miles. I thought that was sufficient.
Hey, yeah.
That was a good round number. I liked it. Um, yeah. So I think
And
it's
then
a
it's
good you'll find different tools as you go along, I think is my main
yes.
point amongst the story, is you're not gonna know when you start out on the journey what tools you're going to need, but you'll be given the tools or shown the experiences as many times as you might need to be shown them before you clue in that this is what you need to do next, right?
Yep.
That's God works with us sometimes when we're not quite clued in. Here's what you gotta do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey. It's a
Mhm.
journey.
And it's the simplicity with the true family, it can feel so complex and so whatever, but when we're centered in that relational, experience with them, just being able to go, "What's up?" "Is
Right.
this someone messing with me? Is this, demonic principalities? Is this
Yep.
coming from, you know, these specific things?"
Mhm.
And then just being able to go, "Okay, how do we take care of this? What's my part? What's, the part of the Lord?" He can do it all, but he invites us into that process because we're learning and growing about walking in our authority.
Yeah.
He says that he has given us all power over the power of the enemy. The challenge with that is actually believing it wholeheartedly. We can maybe accept it up here, but we can have, particularly those of us who are survivors, such fragmentation that parts here feel like, no, 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 the cult is stronger, the cult is more powerful, Satan
Right.
is more powerful. And so it's that reorienting to the truth of who God is, of who the enemy is, and who the cult is, and who we are, and the authority that we have been given. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a concept that, um, many people, not just survivors, don't really have a sense for, and I think we're all better off when we understand that, we have authority. I mean, we've been put in the place of slaves. I hate to say it or use that term, but we're kind of wage slaves. They take away the
yeah,
best part of our
yep,
life, telling men and women you have to work 40 hours a week, and that's the only way you can do it to make money. And then we're told we have to have a certain amount of money, and our lives have to be a certain way, and we have to drive certain cars, we're funneled into this mindset that only seems to benefit them and the however many billions of dollars they send to their cronies in Ukraine or wherever.
yep,
We're paying with our time and our energy and our life with that, and uh, I so getting out of the slavery mindset and saying no, we have authority to say no. We have authority to say abundance is going to come to me through the abundance that we're granted
yeah,
by God. And God never had to say in the Bible anywhere, I don't think there's anywhere he said you have to work 40 hours a week for some other bloke and pay, 50% of your income in taxes, but
yeah,
we've just all accepted that kind of as a standard.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, we've got a lot of things to unlearn, I
yeah,
think, as a culture, and a lot of things to learn about how the occult doesn't want us to be anything but their own chattel, their slaves, their cattle, whether we are in the system or not. I'm talking about
yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
Whether we're in the system or not, whether you've been programmed or not, we're all under their thumb in some way.
yeah,
And I still hope and pray that by learning about it and by letting other people know and teaching other people that something can happen, whether that's a mass exodus or a mass awakening or a tipping point, a 100th monkey kind of a deal, where at some point people just say, no, we don't comply, we do not agree, and go suck an egg. We're not in this with you.
Yeah. And I believe the system will come down. I know that the Lord has a plan of restoration, and that is what gives us hope. Um, you know, you spend a lot of time looking at this stuff, and that can be very overwhelming. I know for me, I have to be careful how much content I intake because I can get really discouraged and want to give up. But when we keep our eyes on, as Jesus did, the joy set before us, and to me, that is the system coming down and seeing
Yeah.
so many captives set free. That brings me joy. It brings meaning to my trauma, what I went through, and any way I can, partner with the Lord in that process. That's joyful, and that's what keeps me going on this journey.
Good. We need you.
Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up there unless you have any other things you wanted to say, Veronica.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
So just want to thank you all for listening and being a part of this. Encourage you to like, subscribe, and share. Pass this on to those who may need it. We looked at some challenging topics today, and if you are in that place of wondering, needing to separate from family members, I just want to say I understand, and I'm so sorry for what you're going through, and that there is hope on the other side. And so just want to encourage you in that. And many of you may have already made that separation from your family, and encourage you to share in the comments how that went for you and any tips you have, because we're all on this journey together. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on Testimony Mountain.